So it's the middle of the night, and yes, I'm awake. The problem is when you have ADHD and extreme problems with a little thing called hyperfocus, sometimes you just can't sleep. Like your mind is just racing about all these ideas and things that you want to do. You're excited, you're anxious, or maybe you're just focused on something and you don't know why. I go through that all the time. It's actually very chronic, and with like ADHD and everything else, there are times where I could literally sit down for a song, like in college, and sit for like 9 hours, not even realize how long I was sitting there. And I basically wrote a whole song. And there were times where I would sit and practice tennis for hours and hours and hours. Next thing you know, I'm out on the court hitting shots for 5, 6 hours. And I didn't even realize it. Like, barely got any swigs of water. And that can be dangerous, but it can also be interesting. It has pros and has cons. And if you deal with this, buckle up because I feel like many of us do. And this is just kind of how I manage and navigate that. For one, there are pros. The pros is that when you are focused, you get things done. You can be productive. You can get through a task that maybe you weren't necessarily prepared to get through, but you got through anyway. Like, you get really into cleaning. You just thought you were going to do one thing and just your laundry, and next thing you know, the whole house is clean. That can be a positive if you made time for it, if it was an opportune time, if it made sense. But there are cons to it. Sometimes my hyper focus got the better of me for a long time. Music has been a hyper focus for me nearly my whole life, and there were some times where I would have a test in the morning, or I'd have school, or I'd have tennis, or I'd have work, and I would just be up, just making music, making a song, 8, 9, 10 hours. And then my roommates would wake up and be like, Mac, you're still awake? And I'd realize that I'd started at 9 p.m. or whatever, and it's 9 a.m. and I'm like awake and still working on stuff. Or I used to have a really bad hyperfixation and hyperfocus on video games, and it would basically take up a lot of time. I could stay up all night playing a video game with my friends or by myself and just trying to get better. And next thing you know, it went from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I had to go to school. So this was something that's been around for a while. But now, being 27, I have to find a way to mitigate that. I have like a family, I have pets, I have a girlfriend, I have, bills, like things to do. So that hyper focus doesn't always go away because it's a part of you and it's a part of your symptoms, and it's something that you have to deal with, but it's also something you can mitigate. And some of the ways that I deal with hyperfocus now, being an adult, and also having to do work and do other things, is being okay with it happening every once in a while. You're not perfect. Humans aren't perfect. There are things you like, and work sometimes isn't the end all be all for everyone's interests, right? And you can hyper focus on an interest and realize that you stayed up a little late. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be hard about it. I used to be bad about that, and that's something that I'm managing every day. Another thing is just like being okay with trying to redirect some of that hyperfocus. So if your hyperfocus is on things that aren't productive for you, like, hours upon hours of games when you need to do other things, or hours upon hours of TV or YouTube or something, TikTok scrolling, something like that. Try and redirect your hyperfocus to maybe an interest, a passion, or something that you needed to work on. For me, today, I know I was in hyperfocus ADHD brain mode because I basically wrote a song today. I was at work and worked from like 8 to 5. And then I had like cleaning and I had other things to do. And like all of that stuff was done in one day. And I realized that it's because I was redirecting my focuses. I would spend an hour here, an hour there, and I would really try to pry my attention away from constantly doing just one thing. I try to spread myself across many things that need to be done. I also don't give myself too harsh of a deadline or timeline for things that don't need one, because I used to be a lot harder on myself for that. And actually, you make yourself anxious because you'll give yourself an arbitrary deadline, and then you get anxious because you didn't meet that arbitrary deadline. So then, like a couple days or a day before, you'll just constantly be drilling at what you need to do. Oh, I said I would do this at this time, and I'm procrastinating and blah blah, and it actually hypes you up, and then you feel like you have to do it in that amount of time. I used to do that with songs. I would be like, I need to finish this song by next Friday. No, I don't. I don't have to finish it by next Friday. And actually, I get more productive and get things done and make it better when I don't add an arbitrary deadline. If there is a deadline, that's understandable, and you have to prioritize what has deadlines and what doesn't, especially with work or, whatever you're doing. But if it doesn't have a deadline and it doesn't need a hard one, try not to give it one. You can give soft times, but I think we're harder on ourselves when we give ourselves like an arbitrary deadline and then try and fit it in that time. We get rushed through it. We lose the enjoyment. And also it can trigger your hyperfocus on trying to finish it in this time period that you had set. Another thing is just being more mindful of the things you do hyperfocus on. Like I have a little list of things that I know I hyperfocus on, and I try to watch the time. I give myself little alarms when I start, because I know with like music or with like, drones or video games or writing or anything like that, I can spend a lot of time on it and I can get really hyper focused into it. Cleaning too. I don't know what it is about cleaning, but maybe that's just something that has been for me, but it's something that I'm used to, and I'll start to sink into it and, kind of lose what I'm doing, kind of on autopilot. And I don't want to be on autopilot when I'm working on songs. I want to think about things intentionally. So I try to give myself little alarms, little reminders to kind of come back into what I'm doing and look back through it. Because there are some times where I'll hyper focus and I'll write this whole song. I won't know where any of it came from. And that can be nice for inspiration. But then I look back and I'm like, there's some things I want to tweak there. Because I'm actually thinking about it actively. So trying to promote active thinking by just waking yourself up, maybe taking a couple breaks, giving yourself alarms. I have like a Garmin watch now that I'm testing out instead of the calculator one, and it helps a little bit with managing your heart rate and activity and what you're doing, which is something I might actually need, and I might do a video on that. But that's just kind of what I do, and it helps a lot because hyperfocus is real, and it can feel like you're being really productive, but sometimes if it's not directed the right way, it's not productive. So just trying to shift through and sift through what is good for you and what isn't really helps. And I know I'm not perfect because I'm up making a video right now, and that's also probably hyperfocus. So this is kind of like a paradox of sorts, or a full circle moment, because I've been thinking about this video idea for the last couple hours. And I talked about hyperfocus to you and how to fix it. But I knew that the best way for me to fix it was to just make the video and then put it out for the next day, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to sleep. You have to know yourself too. But until then, I'll see you tomorrow.